Waters podcast, where Mainers tell their stories unfiltered.
Good afternoon, Maine. This is Chuck Ellis, and you are watching the Muddy Waters podcast. The Muddy Waters podcast exists to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on in our state. Unfortunately, the mainstream media, number one, has you too focused on what's going on in Washington, D.C., and not enough on what's going on in your backyard. And they're just not telling you all the things that are happening because they're not advantageous to ultimately the Democrat Party. I believe the mainstream media is a propaganda arm primarily of the left. And so that's part of the reason we exist, to, interview people from around the state and help people better understand what's going on. And, one of the groups of people that we interview on here are people who are running for office. And today we're fortunate to have with us Ethan Alcorn. Thanks for joining us, Ethan.
Hey, good to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yeah, you're good. Yep.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to have you. I tried to get you on about a little over a year ago when you were running for U.S. Congress, but you didn't trust me enough yet. I don't.
That was going to be your first one. I remember, and I was like, I don't know. Wait, what? Who is this guy? And that's right. Yeah, and I was like, wait, I don't know if I want to be the first one, But I'm really glad to see that you're doing well. You got like 130 or so. So that's great. Looks like it's going well for you.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I've invited all of the gubernatorial candidates that I've been able to have. For instance, all the Republican candidates have come on. I've invited all the Democrat candidates. Unfortunately, none of them have yet agreed. Although we do have somebody, I think, for U.S. Congress who's running on the Democrat side to challenge Shelley Pingree in the primary, is I believe planning to come on. That was the most recent communication. And I've had independent gubernatorial candidate Rick Bennett on. So it's been fun to be able to help the people, learn for myself as I get to know these candidates as we interview them, and then also people here in Maine who are interested, to give them another opportunity to hear from potential candidates. I think it's really valuable in this kind of long form conversation versus their advertising and then the bullet points that you get. As we were talking before, if you're on the radio, you usually have enough time for a few quick bullet points, but not enough time to really go into depth and give people an opportunity to really understand who you are and why you do what you do. So
yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yep.
So
I would agree completely. Yeah, this is a good format. Like you said, gives people a chance to go into a lot more depth. I mean, a lot of when you go on a show on TV or something, it can be really, just like 6, 8, 10 minutes or whatever. And you really don't have, and they will come to you. They'll say, okay, here's the issue. Let's talk about the issues. And then they'll ask you 3 or 4 questions. And it's like, wait, those aren't really my issue, or those aren't the issues that I wanted to talk about. So it can be a little frustrating. And, but it's different when you're on live radio, on a radio show. You can sometimes, go for 30 minutes or whatever, 20 minutes. So,
yeah,
sure.
So I want to spend at least some time talking about some of the things that you were doing when you were campaigning last year, and figure out if we're going to see some more of that, figure out who you were dressing up as, and while you were waving a flag, but which was pretty fun. But basically I'd like to kind of start.
My girlfriend didn't like that too much.
I thought it was awesome. I think me and a friend were out. I don't know if we were putting up. We might have been out putting up Trump signs, and we had hoped to get back over there to say hi. And
I had a lot of people. Yeah, I mean, I had people come by. I had family members come by just because they're like, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" And then I had a lot of people when I got up on the roof. I had a lot of people that would just come by in their cars, and they're going like this, and it was just kind of fun, and kind of I'm actually kind of a shy person, but when it comes to I don't know what theatrics. Sometimes I'm like, you know what, whatever. Let's just do it. You know, this is a weird time we're in. You have to kind of it's again. I don't really go into. I don't want to like make sensationalize things or whatever. But sometimes you have to, in order to get noticed. I mean, you almost have to do some things like that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
but
Well, definitely
I still,
was fun.
yeah. I still have the camper, and but I'd have to change the writing because now I'm running for Senate, and I still have the costume. Actually, there's a costume shop. There was a costume shop right up the road from me, and they went out of business, and that's where I got some of these costumes. And but yeah, and I was going to go to take it and wear it to the Common Sense thing that was yesterday. I actually stopped over there, and I was going to head home, then go back in my Patriots outfit. You know, I thought it would be game and the outfit, but I just didn't. I just had more stuff to do at home and stuff, so I didn't make it there, unfortunately. But it looked like they had fun yesterday. You know, it looked like it was pretty good, and the Patriots won barely.
Yeah.
That was a tough.
Yeah,
game.
no,
That was a tough game for them, but I mean,
I
but it was
thought they
good.
might lose. Yeah, I thought they might
Yeah,
lose.
yeah, they were not looking too good at the end. It was like, whoa, this could be awkward, but they pulled it off. So that Drake Mays is pretty good, you know, pretty good
Yeah,
most of the time.
yeah, no,
But
he seems
anyway,
like it was surprisingly good in my opinion. Although it's Vrabel is a great coach, so
yeah,
that helps. Careful, I might get
yeah,
distracted and talk too much about
yeah,
sports.
yeah. Well, sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I can be easily distracted into
So
NFL
can
talk,
I. So can
um,
I. So yeah.
but yeah, no, I unfortunately was not able to attend the Common Sense tailgate yesterday.
Yep.
I had some other things going on, but I did hear, I heard really good things. A lot of people had fun, and
Yeah, it's a
obviously
great idea. Yeah.
common sense seems like a positive thing in my opinion. So
Yep,
but yeah,
for sure.
so let's, like, one of the things I want to know, I guess, to like kind of start off is like, what's your history? Where do you come from? You know, I'm assuming you probably ran for some things before I noticed you, which was when you were running
Yep.
last year as an independent candidate for
Mm-hmm.
US Congress. So I want to know, like, kind of where you came from, what got you to the point where you wanted to get involved in the political process and run for office, and specifically why you're interested in running as an independent, and then kind of get into some of, like, maybe the issues that are your issues. Let you talk about the things that are important to you.
So yeah, I was born and raised in Maine, and I went away for quite a while. Well, I went away for college. Actually, before that, I went away my parents were divorced, so I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts, for a few years in high school. Then I came back to Maine and went to Hebron Academy, graduated from there. So always be a lumberjack. And then I went away to Arizona, University of Arizona. I had actually a year off from before college, where I went to do this thing called Knowles National Outdoor Leadership School, and that was out in the Rockies. And it was 6 months? It was a semester of kind of like just backpacking and caving, climbing, and all this cool stuff that we got to do. And so I did that I was encouraged to take a year off because by a lot of people. But then I went to Arizona and got a degree in eventually got a degree in anthropology, history, and Spanish, and then came back. Before I came back to Maine, I'll just make it short. I went to California, and then I went back to Arizona, and then I went to Florida, got a degree in massage therapy because I used to race bikes, and I was and do a lot of biking, and I got into sports massage because I was amazed at how it could really affect you. It was like it just really got you going. I was amazed at that. So I got into that end of into things, and then I moved to Minnesota because I found a job up there at the YMCA in like Fargo, North Dakota, and so yes, it's cold there in the winter. It's colder there even than here. And then I had a girlfriend there, but that didn't work out. But met my wife out there, and who was part Native American, and we got married, had two kids out there, then moved back to Maine in '99 and had our third child here in Maine. And so, yeah, so it was great to come back here. Maine is just such a great place to be and to raise kids and all that. And then I had several different jobs. I worked as a sales rep for a company, for audiovisual company, and did. Oh, I was a program director for a nonprofit up in Lewiston for helping Hispanic people. That was in '99 to 2000, year 2000. And so I did that, and then 9/11 happened, and I had already started my job starting my own business doing landscaping at that time. And then 9/11 happened, and I decided, I was like, whoa, that's, I want to be closer to home. So I quit that job actually, and just did my business full time, because it was doing well. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. I don't mind working. I like doing this kind of work. And I got land here, and I was telling you earlier before we started about my wood boiler. So I've got a turkey out there in my wood. Figured out how to smoke meat in my wood. So I'm smoking a turkey in there right now. It's kind of so I'm gonna have to check that when we get off of this. But it's been good. I've just loved working outside, and I don't think I could actually. That saying is true. Once you work for yourself, you'll never work for anyone else again. I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. It's given me. It's really helped me learn so much about business, about taking care of yourself, about fixing things. You really have to be a fixer, a do-it-yourselfer. Like I remember one time I worked for when I was out in Minnesota, I worked for American Express Financial Advisors. And during that interview, they said, well, what's one thing that you contributed to your job, that you could think of? And I was like, and I thought, well, but just before that, I've been working in the hotel industry, and I was like, well, I had this phone, and I had a good idea to move the phone over there, so it was, it would work better for the customers and whatnot. And when I started this business, I thought to myself, what if I was in that interview thing, what would I say about being my own boss? And I was like, well, wait a minute, every single day is that, like, moving that phone thing, because if you stop when you're your own boss, you will literally, like, if you stop, oops, there goes my phone. Let me turn that back on. If you stop doing things, fixing things, the wheels come off your business. And so every day is like that. You've got to find a better way. You've got to build that better mousetrap and do all that stuff. So having my own business was really a great thing for me to and then I had to do my own taxes, learn how to do advertising, sales and all that stuff. So and I had done some sales before. I was gonna mention, this is a good thing to mention to people, is that when I was out in Minnesota and doing all the different stuff out there and getting married and whatever, I did this job where I was just scrambling looking for work, and I sold roses door to door in Minnesota in the winter. So that was right after the massage thing.
Oh,
so.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a good experience too, boy. So that's but I grew up in Maine, and just jumping back a little bit to give my because I wanted to mention that the environment that I grew up in. My dad started a business here. It's now called Boise Cascade. They make roof trusses. It used to be called Wood Structures. So I grew up around that place, and I got to learn a lot of different things, like, industrial stuff, how things work. And I kind of hung out with the guys in the workshop. And I used to run all the equipment at that place, except for the saws. My dad would never let us run the saws, because they were pretty dangerous. But all these machines that would make the trusses, and so that was a great experience too. Was growing up around that, seeing how businesses work, factories work, how people work, together, and then this is also ties into my overall learning. Was I got to see the day that the union came in. It took like a year. They were trying to bring me. This is why I'm kind of anti-union, but I understand why people want unions, because I was like there during this whole process. So this is my father's business. He started with his own two hands. The very first shop order for trusses was my father's handwriting. And he did that first order. So he built that company up, and he used to treat the people really, really well. Like, he would give out Christmas bonuses, $100 bills, and people would be like, wow, I've never seen, this is like in the 70s. Okay. So people are, I've never seen a $100 bill before. And then they started bringing the union in, or they started advocating for the union. And then it finally passed, and they got it. And excuse me. And they, I had never seen my dad look so, he was always just such a, upstanding kind of, nothing seemed to ever faze him. He was just, a type A personality and all that. And the day that the union came in, it looked like he had just been devastated. And I'll never forget that. So I'll always remember how unions can kind of take, I don't want to make this about unions, anti-union or whatever, but it really kind of blew him away. That all that he had worked for was kind of being. I guess you could apply this to government too, but all he had worked for was now being kind of like there was another kind of overriding, like, managerial type thing that was in, like, basically force their way in to try to muck things up, sort of. But in the end, the union actually worked out to be okay. This is the happy ending sort. It made kind of the business a little bit stronger, I think, maybe because people were happier. They at least believed in the union, So, but I still think that I'm still kind of not anti-union, but I just really think that they're more of a kind of can be more of a leech on the system, and they just charge dues and whatnot, and it doesn't. But whatever, it's kind of a thing. It's just where we are. But
it seems to me, I'll just kind of interject here, that, like, the problem with unions is usually typically it starts because there's a distrust between the employees and the people managing them. So I can definitely understand how your dad would be a little dejected at the fact that he thought he was doing a great job being a good employer, only to find out that people were so dissatisfied with him that they wanted to work together to negotiate with him. So that's like that can be, but I think that unions usually start for a relatively good reason, but they tend to just end up in the end becoming another measure of control that makes it more challenging. You hear, like, some nightmare stories out of organizations where the union will fight for an employee that's a bad employee simply because they're part of the union. And even though they know they're in the wrong, they're still going to fight for them. And it's like some of those types of things happen, but you definitely understand why they exist. And I was talking to some people, they have a union here at Maine Med now, and I still think they're not happy with what's going on. And now they're paying dues to the union and still not being happy happy. And so anyway, I feel like unions come in to address a problem and typically address that problem, but then more problems come about as a result of the union than they fix. And from what I hear, but I'm not against unions in all situations, but there are a lot of they're an additional, bureaucracy, essentially.
Right. It's kind of funny because my mom was always, like, growing up, she was always pro union, pro labor, and in fact, both of my parents kind of did a switch. Like, my father was like anti, and he was more conservative back in those days. And then the union came in, and my mom was always pro. She was just kind of one of those tree hugging, bleeding heart, but like just believed that corporations were like, she wanted to stick up for the small guy. And so she believed, but then they kind of both did a switch. Like, my father turned more liberal a little bit. I probably shouldn't talk about my parents a whole lot, and then my mom ended up being kind of understanding that it's not always a good thing to have the unions. But so I think that the unions, remember, what was that movie? Oh, shoot, with Sally Field. What was the name of it? I can't remember. It was about the unions back in the 60s. You're younger, so you may not know. Shoot, I can't remember the name. But that, it was about the mills, and she was what was the name of that movie? Anyway, Sally Field. But that, so the mills, I mean, the unions can actually, like, if there's an industry where people were not being treated well or treated fairly, I think that's where the unions really are play a pretty good role. But like anything good, I think that, see, this goes to my overall point of kind of where I am in, like, philosophy or ideology, is that I think that capital mind in so many ways, when union just being one of them, sort of. I mean, you could argue that there is some good to unions still, but I don't know. I think that for me, I could never imagine. Well, there wouldn't be. I did have 4 employees at one point in time, so I could have probably seen a union with myself in my own business. But oops, there goes I just blacked out there. Okay, back. But no, I just I think that I'm so glad that I never had to really deal with them, but and never really had a job. I never really had a job where the union was, although if I'd stayed longer at a couple of jobs, I probably would have ended up joining a union, but I didn't. I just, fate, the direction that where things went, I just ended up being being on my own and stuff. So, life gives you lessons whichever way you end up going, I guess. So anyway, I don't know how much we want to talk about unions, but
no, I think we can move on from there and kind of
the union show.
Kind of we got a picture of like where you've come from, a lot of things that you've done. I think what's interesting is like the influence. It's having a more conservative dad and a more liberal mom, and then both of them migrating, probably moderating a little bit. Seems like kind of awesome. Probably plays into a little bit of how you end up being a little bit in the independent space yourself.
Yes,
I think there's some of that.
Exactly.
So what was it, and when did you start getting involved in politics, and what pulled you into getting involved in running?
Well, actually, it was 2016 where me personally, because I was never a political person at all. In fact, like I think I said, I was kind of shy and never wanted to really get involved in anything. But I grew up and it was Trump that ended up doing it. Interestingly enough. But I grew up in this environment where, why does my phone keep blacking out? I probably should use my computer, but anyway, but my mom was always very, because I mentioned the union thing. My mom was always very political, and the conversation was always about whether it was Reagan or whoever, in the household. There was always talk about politics, and she was like kind of a lefty liberal protester back in the day in the 60s, and I always remember kind of the kind of the hippie, that was the hippie times, and it was, and so she got, in fact, my mom actually sort of not single-handedly, because I did the research, but she kind of was at the beginning of the forefront of the Maine environmental movement. There was a measure, or a push to get the world's, or the East Coast's largest tank farm. Those big oil tanks that are like over in South Portland. Well, there was a push to get the largest tank farm put on Long Island, I think it was, and she was instrumental in that, in not getting that done, because she brought up a MIT professor who built, or he was the engineer on the super tankers, and she brought him into town hall, or to Portland City Hall, and he testified in front of City Hall that the super tankers take like 6 miles to stop or something. And he said that, if you bring this tank farm in here, one of those super tankers goes across a ledge. It's gonna, your whole Casco Bay is gonna be filled with oil and stuff. And so the tank farm didn't pass. And then the next year, our taxes went up on the house. They reassessed the house. That's what she said. I don't know, but I think because some of the people in the city of Portland were so pissed at that. But so I grew up in this environment, and my father really didn't get into politics. Like I said, he was kind of more of a conservative thing. But that was the stage. And then when in 2016, when Trump came in, I had 3 kids already, and and so I had been a business owner, a parent, a husband, and just kind of been seasoned, I guess is what I'm looking for. And then Trump came in, and I actually went to one of his the rally he had, but I think it was in the summer of 2016, and went to the rally over in Manchester. And I was actually moved by that. I voted for him, and I was really impressed. And I thought he was, the answer. I thought it was great. But then by 2017, and about that time, I had started calling into radio shows and stuff, and I think I called a few different stations. And so it kind of was my awakening. And then by 2017, in January, I was like, I had kind of decided that he wasn't some of the gloss the sheen had come off for me. But even though it's complicated now. Some of the things that Trump is doing, I would agree with, but so my world has really changed a lot as far as where I am with current politics and stuff. So, but that was my beginning with, and then I started actually in 2017. In the spring of 2017, I had this like epiphany kind of thing where I was just like, I was listening to, I think I was working outside, and I had my headphones on, and I was listening to, the politics, like whoever was running, but I guess it was LePage was finishing up, and they were talking about who was going to be the next governor, and this was literally happened. it's like a light bulb went off, and this idea was like, you could run for governor. It's like they were talking about who could run, and I was like, and then I had this internal dialogue like, shut up, no, you can't, you can't do that, and then I was like, yes, I can. Yeah, and it happened again. The idea just kept coming back, and I was like, what is this? What am I thinking? What is this? Because I had called the radio a few times, and John McDonald's show on GAN, and I was like, this thought just wouldn't go away, and I'm like, then I was like, wait, there are some things that I really need to like mentally, figure out before I even like, number one is my fear of speaking in public. I was like mortally afraid of speaking in public. Like I would rather die than speak in public, and it's actually a real thing.
I'm with you. It might surprise you to find that I do not I like speaking in public either, and I completely understand. It's
actually a real thing, and in fact, calling into radio, I used to be so nervous that I can't even tell you how I mean that alone, it doesn't happen much anymore, but I think that I think it's actually kind of it's a handicap, because and I'm like, how do like people who are born with the ability to be comfortable speaking in front of others, I'm like, they have an advantage, and they don't even realize it. Like we are just like, the sweat, the nervousness and all. So I was like, okay, I got to get over that. I'm like, how the hell are you going to get over that? How are you going to, okay, what are you going to do on that one? And then there was a couple others too that I was just like, oh my God, what, but then so that was 2018, that run for governor. And then me and Ken Capron, actually, he reached out to me. He was an independent running for governor then too. And they were like, it's this year reminds me of what 2018 is, like 20 people or something. And I still have the newspaper I cut out from the Press Herald with everybody's faces on it. And I, but by the way, they're all gonna be dwindling away just like they did then. But I mean, it's funny, it's just funny to see all these people lining up. I'm going to be your next governor. No, I'm going to be your next governor. But so anyway, that was did that kind of answer your question a little bit about that?
I think it's like how you go. So did you end up running for governor? That you did run for governor as in independent in 2018?
Yeah. So that year, it's funny. That year I didn't know. With Ken Capron, I didn't know how to get like. I just look back and I go, what were you thinking? How did you I didn't know how to get signatures. And so I think I ended up getting like 300 signatures I needed 4,000. And Ken was this kind of the same way. We went out to a couple places together, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So but we did, it was kind of fun though, because it was like a feeding frenzy or something, we were getting, I went to a couple of debates with the Democrats, and then I did one independent, like Cape Elizabeth High School wanted to do one for independents. And so I did that with what's his name? Chris Jennings or John Jennings from Lewiston. I think he passed away actually. And then, who else was at that? The one that she ran and she ended up getting on the ballot. She was another independent. And then, Alan Karen, is that right? Yeah, Al Karen, or is that his name? Yeah, but so we were in a debate at Cape Elizabeth, and that was kind of my first time being in front of people on stage. But so I didn't get the signature. I didn't get the signatures, and so that was just like boom, done. And then so that was 2018. And then in 2020, I was mad at Trump, so I threw my hat in the ring for president. I thought this, hey, so at that time was going through a divorce, and my kids were all in college or older, and they were out of the house, and so I was alone. And this was COVID,
Yeah.
and I was like, you know what? I got nothing else to do. I've got my camper and my dogs, and I thought, you know what? I'll just take off and do this. And I had my big USA map, and I figured I knew how many signatures I had to get here and there and everything. And I thought maybe, just maybe, some billionaire would be like, hey, you know what? I'll give you the money you need. We'll get your we'll get your help that you need and stuff to get on to. And so that was when COVID happened. And so a funny thing happened then. Vermont actually was kind of a cool state. You know what they did? They said, we're going to drop the signature requirements completely. So if you can get up here and get your running mate for president, you'll be on the ballot. And you'd have to get your not dignitary, what's oh my God, your delegates. And so I was like, oh my God, I can get on the ballot and without doing any signatures in Vermont because of COVID. And actually, I had lawsuits because of the signature requirements. The Libertarian Party was suing, and I got on a bunch of couple different lawsuits, fighting against the government, really, for illegal, unconstitutional lockdowns and all that. So, but nonetheless, I didn't get to Vermont because I would have had to get a running mate, and I didn't have a running mate. Now, it was a pretty serious thing for me to do, and by the way, it's really tough to find a running mate for president. You know why? Because it's like everybody wants to be the guy, the president, and so it's like to find a guy who's just going to be your play second fiddle or whatever the phrase is hard because nobody wants to be your lesser, right? So
yeah. I mean, if you're going to go through the nonsense and the insanity of running for any type of office and dealing with the negative backlash, you want some more out of it, I would think, right? So
yeah, exactly right. So that was an interesting thing. Was like nobody really wants to be here. Nobody really wants to be VP. But or at least they didn't with me. But anyway, it was a good experience. And then there was the lawsuits, and I mean, I have a stack like this of lawsuits that I was involved in, and all that. I mean, oh my God, the paperwork. But and then so that was that, and then you could make an entire podcast on. I could go talk for like 2 hours on just COVID and that period where I was stuck basically. And then I had I was doing there was the Trump rally, the Trump COVID rallies up in Augusta, but I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to turn it political. This is about government tyranny. And so I did the Joe Riley Parks right in Saco, and I had signs and everything. And it's now 5 years ago, but I did that, and I mean, I thought, well, you know what? If this government is going to keep me from going, like locking me down and changing rules and all this stuff, then I'm going to fight and do what I can where I can, and that was right there. So I did that, and then in 2021, I ran for school board and actually got on the ballot right here in Saco, and then. So that was a person who was, I think it was an open, no, it was somebody, somebody was rerunning. She was rerunning, but when I took out the papers and to get signatures, she jumped off and a new guy came on. And I'm like, I swore that was like the machinery behind the scenes was like, okay, we've got this guy. We got this guy who's, he may win. So let's get somebody who's going to be more like him to fight him. And I ended up losing by 68 votes on that one. Oh, and yeah, but I'll tell you another thing about it taught me a lot about school boards. and school boards are the weirdest animal. They because I went by the SDU or whatever the damn thing's called, SAD or the administrative district thing, and I got the paperwork for being once you're on the school board, and I got it's like this notebook like this thick, and I started reading through it, and it was like, thou shalt not rock the boat, thou shalt not, like, you must comply, you must obey, we must be a team, and I'm like, what the. This is just like nonsense. This is crazy. These people are like, this is like, circles in the eyes and like, you will obey. We will, there's nothing that we won't approve of. No budget. We will. It's like, this is what's wrong with this country. We have people like this who in charge of all of our city budgets, our school budgets. And I was like horrified, and I was like, no wonder they put a guy in there to run against a Democrat to run against me.
It sounds a little bit, Ethan, like you hate our children.
Yeah, right. Oh my God. Oh boy. It's not even about children. It's not even about children. It's about what it is. It's about the expense and the monopoly and that they have. And I've been to a few city council or a few school board meetings where people get up in front of the and by the way, before I forget, I want to come back to about children and COVID and what they did to our kids during COVID. But I went to a couple of school board meetings, and you'll get these. What they do is if there's any chance that the money is going to be cut, you'll get parents will come forward, especially like special needs or whatever, and people. Well, I'm not picking on them now, but it was different groups or different people, and they would say, you can't cut that because my child is going to do that, and my child's going to suffer. And so you get these parents that come in there. This is how it works, and they have no backbone, and that's why they'll just respond. I mean, the school board has no backbone, so they'll.
Oh, absolutely. So at my school board, fortunately, we voted down one of the budgets here in Westbrook in 2024, and so in 2025, when they were putting forth the budget, they put a slimmer budget than I think they would have because they'd already lost one vote and they were concerned about losing another, and so they decided I think what I'm going to say is they made every intention to make it look like they were proposing a thinner budget so that they could pass it, while still including in some things that I think, the budget's monstrous. So I'm certain that there's space for cutting, $53 million. I'm sure there's some fat to trim there. But they still had those people come forward. Like the teachers came in and were like, with this budget, I can't even provide snacks to my kids, which had me thinking. I was like, I went to school all the way up from pre-K all the way through to 12th grade, and I never had any teacher give me snacks, and I still had plenty of food because like the food that you eat for lunch is plenty. Like why is there this need to also provide snacks, especially now lunch is free for those who need it. And so it's this like so they still have even in situations where they've trimmed it a little bit, they still have people come forward and be like, I wish you could do more, it's so mean of you. Anyway, it's schools have become really like a social network, a social care network, rather than just you go to school, learn, and you leave and come home. It's like they want to provide everything, and unfortunately, people are so much in trouble in other ways that it's kind of is like that. It's become like that because, and this gets to a whole bigger problem, like how big government is and why they're taxing us to death, and inflation because of the Federal Reserve, and we don't have sound money, and they just keep spending in Washington. So it's just one big, huge, massive problem, and it's making this once great nation so overburdened in so many ways, and so people are going to
food pantries, and they're going to the school to get help. And but yeah, anyway, yeah, on the COVID thing, before I forget, let's not forget what they did to, I mean, kids they had to wear their mask all day. They were, they didn't, the schedules were disrupted. They didn't learn as well because they had to wear the masks and all this other stuff. And, some of them didn't even come to school. And I mean, it just goes on and on. I really have a lot of, oops, there goes my screen again. I have a lot of contempt for those that went along, well, for the CDC and the deep state government that I believe was behind a lot of the COVID stuff, but also the people that didn't see through it, like I did and others did. Mostly conservative people, for some reason, saw it, or people who had two brain cells that rubbed together, I guess. But we saw the craziness and we saw what was going on. And then I have a lot of contempt for the people who went along with it. Well, for the people that were suckered into it and didn't see what was going on, I guess I can't hold contempt for it. But the people that knew or that should have known, like Janet Mills, I mean, I cannot her for her behavior in COVID, and I probably never will. I mean, I may forgive her, but I will never forget what she did.
Right.
And to me, it is like I got it. I figured out what was going on, and I was speaking out. But a lot of these governors, they literally just went like they could have treaded water or pushed back like Christine Nome did or whatever. But a lot of them, they just like sunk their teeth into it, and they just went they just grabbed the power and just it was like this is our chance or whatever they're thinking. Like they're like, this is the mountain we're gonna die on, and like they just did everything. And this is a good example of what too much power can do. What maybe the so and you know what? Let me weed in something here. I said originally during COVID, I was doing, and they had stopped taking calls at WGAN, by the way. They completely stopped for that period. So me and the other callers, we were like, what is going on? And I was started to do like little Facebook posts and little live things and stuff. And one of the things I said was, you cannot, at the beginning of COVID, I said, you cannot lock people down like this. You have to be careful. And you have to take things, like act locally. Like, you don't just lock down a whole state when you don't even have any case. You don't have like you don't have any outbreaks. Remember the whole, oh my God, all the buzzwords and all this stuff, the fear porn. But so I said that, and what did she do? What did people do? What did states do? They followed the mantras and the Johns Hopkins fear porn stuff, and they locked down in the entire states. And what did they do? They caused the biggest medical catastrophe, biggest business catastrophe based on the medical catastrophe in U.S. history. I mean, we had how many millions unemployed? 60 million unemployed, $16 trillion overall affecting the economy. And we had, I mean, just it goes on and on. It goes on and on. Actually, no, it was more than, I think it might have been 60 million. But as far as job losses and all that stuff. And then anyway, whoa, I just went off on a wicked tangent. What were we?
No, that's so. I think we were talking.
We were talking about schools and stuff.
the schools, but in general, it was a conversation like kind of what got you involved in politics, and you
Yeah,
had
yeah.
gotten to the point where you had run for school board in
Oh
2021,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
So then
But
the
going back to the lockdowns, I mean, I'm with you. Like I was pretty like I gave him a couple of weeks, and then after a couple of weeks, I was like, I was
yeah, yeah.
skeptical that it would even get to that point. Watching what had gone on in China, and also
Mhm.
seeing when it first hit the United States, I was watching it pretty closely. So, um, uh,
You mean
so
you didn't you thought it would go like the 2 weeks, but you didn't think it would go the 2 years or whatever that
yes, correct. I was
nobody
like,
thought that.
I was dedicated to being at a restaurant at the first possible opportunity, because like I was not scared. Not that I didn't think. I mean, COVID, it was a real thing. Was it as bad as
Yeah.
they were saying it was? I don't think the data supports that. At this
No,
point, I don't
no.
think the data supported it at the time. Like the locking down children in particular, just for fun, for those who maybe aren't aware, there was zero data that we had that would suggest we actually knew pretty early
Yeah.
on that children were not carriers. That was one of the things
Right,
that the
right.
reasons that they
Nope.
didn't have kids going to school. There is actually no data to suggest that they were carriers.
Yeah.
I remember in particular there was a situation where a friend of mine, my nephew was sick, and we thought my brother thought he might have had COVID, and turned out that he
Mhm.
didn't. And when I mentioned that to a friend, she's like, "Oh, good." I'm like, "Oh, great. That means he only has the flu, which is worse for children than COVID." We actually knew
Okay.
that the flu, like the flu, was
Yeah.
far worse for children than
Yeah.
COVID. COVID was worse for elderly people and those with a significant number of
Good point.
pre-existing conditions, but it was not dangerous at all, like almost at all, to children. Like the only children that were negatively
Right, right.
impacted by it were ones that were either had, yeah, I mean, it basically didn't really affect. Anyway, point is, like,
Yeah,
it
no,
was,
I know.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think no children died in Maine of COVID, I don't think.
no,
I mean, none did, and even for the rest of us, it was 98% survivable or whatever. And I mean, like I said, I could talk to you for like all night long on COVID because
yeah,
it was such a huge thing for me, because I was really starting to get into podcast. We talked about this earlier before we started going on this. Is that the mainstream media and the alternative media and podcasts and everything, and then you could find a lot of stuff on YouTube, and then on X. It was Twitter, I guess, back then, but and people were starting to put it together. And
yeah.
I saw a lot of liberal people I knew were not getting it. They were like trapped in the NPR or CNN thing, and they were
MSDNC.
not. Yeah, LSDLC or whatever. Oh my God, the acronyms alone today are just enough to maybe drive you crazy, So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just, but so yeah, it was just, I think it was just the greatest medical disaster we've ever had, and then and you created all this debt and stuff, but
yeah.
and on and on, but so anyway, in 2020, that was 2021 where I ran for school board, and then 22, I ran again for governor, and that's when I had learned to, how to gather signatures a little bit better and stuff. And I was still, I had, wait, 20, yeah, I'd had a girlfriend, and so I was, but then that didn't work out, I think, and then. Yeah, and then 22, I was like, I had all the time in the world. I still had a camper, so I was like, hey, I'll run for governor. And I was like, I've got to, because Janet Mills has got to be taken down, and I mean, in politically. And so I ran. I was like, I'm doing this, and it's like I can do. I've been on the ballot once and for a school board, and I ran before, but now I know how to get signatures and stuff. So I ran again, and I got 3,400 signatures. I took my dogs, went way up north, but it wasn't enough signatures, and I just the clock ran out. And for independent, you got to get 4,000 signatures. So
Oh, really?
so
Interesting.
yeah. for governor and for Senate. For U.S. House, it was only 2,000, by the way. But so I got that many things. The clock ran out, and it's like that May 28th deadline. And I had a friend who was helping me actually collect signatures, or gather and take them to City Hall to get notarized or to get verified, or whatever the term is. And then he was helping me on his motorcycle. He was running around, and it was like May 28th. It was that day. And I was like, shit, I don't have that. I can swear on your show, right? By the way.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, I don't think I have them all, but I don't know, because I haven't counted them in like a couple days. So I was like, I had all these. I was just throwing them all together, and he showed up and he gave me what he had. They've been verified, and I ran up to Augusta at literally 5 o'clock. It was like 4:59, and I'm like, if this door doesn't open, and I opened the door to the Secretary of State building, whatever that building is up there, and then Shanna Bells was sitting up there, waiting for me, and so we did the count, and it came up 3,400, and I was just like, I'm so ashamed. It's just like all this work, and I made them count them and everything, but what I was just like, I had no time to even count them. So that ended badly. And then I was like, you know what? Actually, it was just all for the better, because Paula Page was on the ballot, and I was like, he's going to take Janet down, And then it didn't happen, and she was the incumbent, so that happened. And also,
well, I think it was that she was the incumbent, but also like a couple of things happened. Like some of these politicians are really good at politicking, right? And so one of the things that she did that I thought was really smart, I didn't like, by the way, but I thought was really smart, is that she removed basically all the COVID restrictions like about 8 to 10 months before the election, right?
Yeah.
So by the time the election came around, it didn't make sense to have to some degree, it didn't make sense to like have your campaign be about the lockdowns, because now they're gone and the people don't feel that pain anymore. They feel freedom. And they don't want to be reminded of that pain. So if you remind them,
I forgot about all that.
Yeah,
I forgot that she did that.
Yeah. Oh, very tactical. Very tactical. She's like, right now they're going to start working on talking about how education is so poor, and we're going to, as a result of that, they're going to get back to the basics. It's like, why weren't you back to the basics 2-3 years ago? Oh, it's because now you're up for a gubernatorial election, and you need to try to make it look like you're trying to do the right thing, even though she's not. Like, whether Hannah Pingree or Shanna or whoever ends up being the person who comes out on the Democrat side, they want to make sure they're like, we're already focused on fixing education. It's like, well, why'd you mess it up in the first place? But it's tactical, and it's really intelligent. So there was that. Plus, what's really
yep. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the other thing that's really obnoxious to me and frustrating is how many people actually think that she did a good job during COVID. And I think there are two reasons for that. One is basically, once things opened back up, people forgot about it, but they also also stopped reporting. So every single day BDN was like reporting the COVID numbers for like almost 2 years, right? When Maine's numbers started to not look so good anymore, they stopped reporting them. They stopped the daily report and all that other kind of stuff. So when Maine started, so Maine still did better than like some of the other states or whatever, because Maine is a rural state primarily, not because we have better COVID policies. But people aren't doing the research. They're not paying attention. They don't know the whole thing. Most people in Maine actually think Janet Mills and Nirav Shah did a great job during COVID. Again, partly because of those two reasons. They didn't do the research and didn't realize what's happened, and they when they were paying attention, it looked better than it ended up being in the end. So anyway,
it was a clever. It was you bring it up, and I had forgotten, but that's a very clever. I mean, it's unbelievable, right? How they worked the politics around COVID to their advantage when they wanted to, which is it's crazy, right? Like they should have been talking about what they did wrong and what I mean. It's like politics it's just crazy right now.
Yeah.
But but I think another thing on your point on what happened during all that period is I think that people got like Maine went more liberal because what happened is in COVID we had a lot of I call them COVID refugees. They came here from like New York and Boston. They came up here to their summer homes or they just started buying up real estate, and that caused another big problem. And that skewed Maine slightly more liberal. Like there were New York license plates like all year long for a couple of years. It's like, whoa, what the heck? And until people changed their registrations over or whatever. And so Maine went a little bit more liberal. So that helped and I think LePage kind of thought, well, he's got this. I think a lot of people rested a little bit on the flat. Oh, they're like, yeah, we're really gonna take her down.
Well,
and that didn't happen because,
and there was the assumed but never arrived red wave, the red mirage.
Right. That's yeah. But I will say this though, and this really kind of got me mad as far as like if I wish that I had been there because I would have busted her ball. I shouldn't say that. I would have really taken her to the mat on COVID. I mean, I knew COVID so well because of the lawsuits. I was a massage therapist. I knew about natural health and I knew about all this stuff. And by the way, I come from a science background. My step grandfather was a Nobel Prize winner of 1947 biochemistry, Carl Corey. Science was in our family. I have a brother who was a botanist and stuff. So, but even the best people in science didn't just kind of lay down and rolled over during COVID. But still, I was primed for it, and I was ready to go to town and just like freaking drop the bomb on the COVID stuff. But I wasn't there. And then there was that other guy, the independent guy who was there. That was the other reason why I dropped out. I was like, oh man, there's this independent guy. Excuse me. And I can't remember his name now. What was his name? He was a doctor or something. What was his name? Shoot. Anyway, that was that debacle, that whole thing. And so, and then then getting back to me and my stuff here, just to kind of wrap up your original question from like an hour ago. So I met a woman who is my current girlfriend, and in 2022, and later after that governor's race, and then the U.S. House race in 2024 came up, and I kind of told her I wouldn't do politics again after the governor thing, but then I talked to her about it, and I was like, look, I can do this, and it's not going to take any time away. And I was really, so I ran for U.S. House, and I did get all the signatures that time, and I got on the ballot. And that's kind of just to put a book note or a bookend on that conversation. We were on that question you had. So that was how that went. And I, and then, plays into all the camper stuff and all that and whatnot. So
you got 5% or 4.9%, I think, and almost 21,000 votes.
Oh,
so
yeah. I got 5% and 20. Is that what you just said? 20,000 votes.
Yeah, 20,833 according to Ballotpedia.
Okay, yeah, it was about that.
Yeah, 883.
Yeah,
20,883. Yeah. So
I think it would have been higher. It would have been higher for a couple of reasons, I believe, and I am convinced that I would love to know, and I'll never know, but I would love to know how many second place or second choice votes I got. I would love to know that because there were mostly, there was a Republican, Ron Russell, and the Democrat, Shelley Pingree, and those were the first place votes for a lot of people. I mean, I got some first place votes. I got 20,000, whatever. But most people, and then there was the early voting too, which affected me too, because I wasn't able to get, it's a hindrance. You can't. It just takes away from your time as a newcomer. So I was not able to get to get going on that, and I had I gotten a little more traction, I think that and not had that early voting so much. I think that I would have gotten higher first choice votes, and that if that had happened, it would have brought Shelley down below 50%, and then we would have had ranked choice voting. And I don't know if I still don't think I would have won, but you know what? One thing that really didn't bother me at the time, but it really started to bother me a little bit more, is that on a couple of radio stations, I heard people saying that that there was no ranked choice vote. It's like I was being almost ignored by Republicans, and that to me really got to me. Not immediately, because I was like, whatever, there was the whole race and but after a while, because I had heard some people say that, oh, ranked choice voting's not in play. There's not even a third. I'm like, dude, I am on the freaking ballot. And there were people who were not even saying I was on the ballot. And it's just, I don't know. I just can't figure it out sometimes how people on the right, if you're a candidate who doesn't check all of their boxes, like a lot of times we always hear about the people on the left who don't check the boxes, but on the right, it's this. I believe it can happen also. And one of those boxes that I wasn't checking was I was not checking Israel first, and I was starting to call out the Gaza thing was happening, and I was just not. I'm like, now I'm America first, not Israel first. And that you're starting to actually hear that now, that Marjorie Taylor Greene, who just quit. And I actually know, I go into X spaces a lot. And one guy said to me, he said, in 2028, if you're not America first, and like meaning not Israel first, I mean, if you're not America first, you're not going to win primaries and stuff if you're not. But I don't know if that'll be true. But
I mean, it depends on where. I think a lot of it is demographic focused. And also, like, one of the things that is a huge rising thing within the conservative movement is actually being America first. And there's a lot to go into that, right?
I was ahead of the curve. I was ahead of the curve on that. And the OG Republicans were like not hearing that. The people that I'm not going to name names, but I could, because but they were not. They were not. What's that?
I was going to say there's still a degree where they're not. I mean, there's a lot of people that are not understanding the difference.
Right.
And I think some of the people that are not in agreement with you on that believe that they still believe. And for me, this is a complex issue. But I think that what I'll say about, because I don't feel like I fit into any box that many people talk about. But I think there's still this belief that Israel is this this ally that we need, and so they believe that their view of the connection with Israel is an America first view, because they believe that there's the nations in the Middle East pose an existential threat to America, and so without the connection and the collaboration with Israel, we would be at risk. Again, I understand where they're coming from, but I don't.
Yeah.
There's a
I do
degree.
too.
And there's a degree where I agree. Where I tend to
Right.
disagree with them, for instance, I know this is about you, so I'll shut up in just a second, but is where
No, go ahead. It's important. Yeah.
where included in that idea of recognizing the strategic alliance or whatever is trusting everything that their government does and agreeing with them. And that's where I'm like, yeah, I don't trust everything that any government does. And then there are some specific elements where I'm
Yeah.
like very suspicious. So anyway, but to your point, like, specifically among the younger people, it doesn't matter whether they're Democrat or Republican. Actually, there's an element of, we need to focus on our nation first. They wouldn't necessarily.
Right.
So in
Right.
the conservative side, it's an America first thing. In the liberal side, it's a more of just a pro-Palestine, anti-Gaza, anti-Israel thing.
Yeah.
So there's that. But either way, in the youth, there's not the support for Israel.
I think that the youth gets it, and the youth is young enough so that they haven't like latched on to the political sides really. They're just kind of like they can kind of see, and the Tuckers and the Candace Owens are getting into this stuff. I think almost as a pressure release valve, sort of, and it's just such the zeitgeist hot potato right now, like with like the Mark Levins, and I mean it's like,
well,
wow, people are really,
with Tucker interviewing Fuentes, who I have there are a lot of things, there are some things that I would say that I definitely agree with Fuentes on, but there are a lot of things that I'm like, I'm a little uncomfortable with. But Tucker's interviewing Fuentes really set them off, and they're like, what's interesting is, I think
I'm not a Groyper, and I don't really follow him. I think I follow him on X just because I want to. I think I do, but I'm not really sure. But he's. I mean, this is another one of the subjects we could go for. I literally could talk to you, all night, like, because I've done. So I'm comfortable in this space, talking about Israel, because it's another one of the things. I was home alone, and I started, in 2017, I started following some podcasts that talk about religion, getting and doing deep dives into it. And I was raised Christian, but I never really went. There we go. And by the way, I'm at 60%, I think, 60 something still battery. But nice. So yeah, I know this. Well, I love this phone. I made a huge upgrade on this phone. It's got the best screen. This like the S25 Ultra. It's like, like cost me money, but it was worth it. I finally splurged on phones. But I'm comfortable in that space because of all the work that I had done, because I realized this issue was going to be a big issue, and has been a big issue for so long. So, and I just happened to, the people I was following in 2017, so it started with Alex Jones, but then I was like, I kind of went off. He's, to me now, he's just too far gone. But this whole thing, like, I remember I said that Trump got me going, and then there was the WikiLeaks and the Alex Joneses, and then the QAnon, but I was like, no, Q is just. But I kind of got into that realm, and then you have to be kind of smart enough to know what rabbit holes not to go down, and so, but yeah, I think that it's just such a big topic, and it a lot of people are not comfortable talking about it, but I think that it's huge. Like, it's almost an issue, and that's why I'm running. I don't think Susan Collins, God, she couldn't have a conversation. It would probably, she would be so she'd be so worried about that conversation, just like she couldn't really handle it. And Janet Mills, I mean, I just, my my fantasy is to like be on stage with Susan Collins and Janet Mills and just rip them to shreds on, on Israel or on Janet's budget. I mean, doubling the state budget. Why do you even think you can run again if you double the state budget? This is the insanity, right? That she thinks she's gonna, or Graham Plattner. We haven't really even mentioned him yet, but
the communist.
Speaking of like Nazi tattoos and stuff, yeah, is he a communist or a Nazi?
Or a Nazi? We don't know. We do know that he doesn't understand. We do know that he doesn't understand why black people don't tip. We do have that and a plethora of other things. And rumor has it he has a drinking problem as well. But that's a whole other story.
And he his
minor story, but he
only provides oysters to his mother, and he's also
I heard that, yeah.
Bad Empanada is a podcaster that I didn't even know he existed, but I found out about him because supposedly he uncovered that Graham was a BlackRock mercenary, and he has ties to do your own research, and he has ties to Israeli intelligence. So Bad Empanada is one word. He's a podcaster, whatever. He did some research, and the on his refrigerator, there's a picture of a BlackRock, like the BlackRock symbol or something, or yeah, not BlackRock, Blackwater. That's the Eric Prince, and all that stuff. But anyway, so yeah. Anyway, what was there a question or where are we going?
I think we got lost somewhere along the lines there, but I think one of the things I want to give you some time, although we are running up against it at the moment, we have another 15 minutes or so, maybe, before I turn into a not really turn into a pumpkin, but I got to figure out dinner.
I could use some water. I forgot to I was like, what am I doing? No water. But anyway, that sounds good. 15 minutes.
Yeah, but I think the question would be like, obviously one of the issues that's important to you and being like kind of more of an America first approach is our station to Israel, which you've kind of gotten into to a degree. What are the other like major issues? I know I'm going to make an assumption and kind of give you a lead here because I think this is one you'll want to talk about, and you've kind of addressed it to some degree. You've kind of hinted at it, but is like the national debt and taxes and all that kind of stuff, government spending. These are things I see you as a very limited government kind of guy. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of overlap between your views and like the Republican views. It seems, though you're not a Republican, obviously, I'm sure you differ in some ways, but yeah, so what are the major, you've talked about before how you go on and people ask you questions about what's important to them. So I don't want to steer the question too much, but like, what are the issues that are most important to you that have got you in this place where like, I've got to run because people are not doing their jobs. They're not focused on the right things. What are those issues?
So basically term limits, government, lower taxes. I think that government has just gone completely off the deep end, and I mean from in every direction, and from taxes at the local level, and I mean if this was remember the Boston Tea Party, we fought a revolution to not be taxed like this, and so it's just almost in fact, it's so over the top insanity. Like I sometimes don't want to get into the debate about the issues that they always want to talk about because it's so limiting. And before you know it, you're talking about, you're talking about small little things and you miss the big picture. So I think, was it on here or before we were talking, I I mentioned the like going on these little shows where you get 6 minutes to talk, and they come to you with the issues. They're like, okay, well, these are the issues, and then and it's like, no, those aren't really my issues. But so that's basically it. I mean, I guess if you could, I mean, so term limits, limited government. I would nationalize marijuana, or decriminalize marijuana, because of the pot shops here they're I mean, not pot shop, the growers and the recreational places, they're treated unfairly, and they're afraid because federally it's illegal. And let's see. So a digital bill of rights, because I believe that this is part of the insanity, is that they're talking about putting in data centers all over, and making, I believe this plays into the vaccine passports and all that digital crap that they try to, the tracking and tracing and all that. So there's that. I'm against all the digitization I mean, it could get really bad. It could get like 1984 times 10 or times 100. But also I'm very, what goes with the America First is I believe, and this has been a recent thing, is more recently for me, is that I think Trump is doing an okay, he's trying to do a good, I think he's doing an okay job on getting immigrants, illegal immigration, under control. And I think that is actually a really big problem. One quick thing on that is I was in the Monument Square collecting signatures or doing something up there like a couple of years ago, and this guy from Guatemala came up, or I think he was Mexican or Guatemalan. He came up to me with a little box, and he's like, "Hey, ¿quieres comprar esta cosa para ti?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to buy that little box that has nothing in it. I know or a couple rocks." And I was like, "Holy crap! Am I in frickin' Mexico City? This shouldn't be happening in my country." And so I was, it was that, and that it gets into the whole mentality of, are you going to have government pay for all these people, and they're an extra burden? And yes, I know you got to have some migration or migrants to pick the vegetables and do some of the things that Americans don't want to do, blah blah blah. But it is actually a really big problem, and I believe that they're trying to. I believe that some of it is on purpose, with Catholic Charities and HIAS, those groups, bringing them in here on purpose to destabilize America. One of the fastest ways to destroy a country is to overrun it with people who are not indigenous or who are not from there. And I know when I say indigenous, all the people are going to say, "Oh, what about you're just a white person came here from." Well, no, we came here and we built this country. The Indians, we had we fought them. They fought us. Yeah, they got the short end of the stick. Eventually, they got pushed pushed around and stuff. And my kids are 1/16 Native American, the Lax Band of Ojibwe. I get it, but that is another big, has become a big issue. Is this illegal immigration part, and that's part of America First. Is that thing, like, what other country is going to allow just put their feet up on the border patrol, put their feet up, and just you're going to flood in? Like, I can't go to just go to Canada and get a job and start working, and you decide, hey, I'm just going to stay here. What they.
Not only can you not go to Canada, you can't go to African countries. My wife is Rwandan,
exactly.
lives in Kenya. I go to Kenya, and there are signs everywhere that says, if you do not have a work permit, you cannot work. And that's one of their biggest concerns with people coming there from other countries, is that you're not allowed to work here because they need to prioritize their existing citizens.
Yeah. One other quick thing before we move off that subject is that what I don't like is, like, I don't like the weaponization of anything, like the weaponization of illegal immigrants coming in here. It can become a weapon, when you overrun.
Yeah.
I don't like the weaponization of ICE either, where they were singling out people who were protesting against Gaza. And then some people will say, well, yeah, but they weren't here they were here illegally and they were creating chaos, which is the gray area. But were they really breaking the law if they were it's like they were being singled out just because they were protesting against for standing up for Gaza. And that part got into a gray area for me, but ultimately, and then people will say, well, immigrants don't cause crime, like more Americans cause more crime than but if you consider all the like South Side of Chicago, maybe, but just being here as an illegal immigrant, you are actually illegally here. And so that's the thing. That's the point that needs to. Whoops, there goes my screen. That's the point that needs to be hammered home on that. And the thing is that the other thing that's needs to be said here is that there's a level of, like, I made up this term, but we don't live in a democracy anymore, or whatever. We live in an obfuscocracy, which is to obfuscate. So we're not getting the truth from the media anymore. We're not getting the truth from the government. Always, we know that most people would agree with that. And so I think that's also probably the danger zone for me. Like, it's almost like you have to just go along with one side or the other, and in order to make it, you have to go along with some of the lies and all of that. So that's why I think that needs to be said. That's what I'm like. I come from, my father's side was a long line of Earl judges, and it was ingrained in me when I was young to be honest, to be truthful, and to be and all that, so I think that we have lost that somehow, and it's really this. When I was a kid, I never thought that we would be where we are in this country now. Like, I could never have imagined the world that we're in now. I don't think it's like truth is stranger than fiction or whatever. It's so bizarre in like 1984 after what happened with COVID and whatever. It needs to be. I think we need more people. Like, unfortunately, Marjorie Taylor Greene was getting to that point where the bravery and stuff, and then she ducks out. So.
It's interesting too, and where we know her reason for why she's saying that she ducked out, but we don't know 100%, right? And you've got two different groups of people at this point. One are the groups that are just completely defending her, and the other are the groups that are just attacking her. My favorite, and I just feel like I called this out when I was on the radio, and this question came up this morning when I was on with Ray Richardson, which is that. There are people that are basically like, of course she's resigning as soon as she locks in her pension. And like, I think they're operating under a false assumption that she's going to make like $174,000 a year for the rest of her life, which is not the truth. She's going to make $8,700 a year. That's her pension after 5 years from the federal government. So that's not why. That's not why she resigned.
She was rich before she came in. She was rich before she got a 50%.
Her family was, yeah.
Yeah, 50. She's 50% ownership in her family's construction business, from what I heard. So I think. I mean, you're right. We won't really know, but my initial thought was like she's either getting death threats or she is going to. I like to say I was first, but I thought, oh, she's going to run for president. I was like, that's it. She slayed the dragon with the Epstein thing, and now she's going to run for. And then the next day, people were saying she's going to run, and then she had to come out and say, I'm not running, whatever. Oh boy. So it's I wonder if she, I was like, because like she got out on. It's like, wow, she really got out. She's like at the peak. And it's like, this is where people would kind of want to get out if they want to go on to the next bigger thing, kind of. So I mean, but it's 2020, it's 2025, and that's 2028. So I don't, but who knows? Maybe she was um maybe she had enough, or maybe maybe she got some threats. I mean, Washington is a after the Clintons and everything that we've seen. I mean, Washington can be a dangerous place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary place, and from a variety of different levels. I can only imagine that some of the evil people in our world that are powerful, are willing to threaten at multiple layers and levels, right? Like, including people's families and things like that. We know what's happened to, I know that in particular, like the people protesting and the death threats against Justice Kavanaugh, and
Right, yeah.
especially
Yeah.
with the position of like looking at the Epstein files. That seems like, I think there are some powerful people that didn't want that to come out. And I'm sure there were a lot of death threats associated with that. And I heard rumor that, like, I know rumor is probably not the right word, but I heard that her dad passed away relatively recently. I don't know how recently, and she, like,
Right,
that's part
right.
of, she's now a co-owner of that business as a result of
Yeah.
partly as a result of that. She was, but I think she owns a higher percentage, and also like her losing the support of Trump. I mean, her entire time in politics, she has been such a huge Trump supporter.
Right.
And so now that he is effectively soured on her, I comment sometimes on the conservative side, we fail to remember that people make emotional decisions. Like, the Republicans are out there like, here are the facts. And like, obviously some of the facts are pure and some of them are, intentionally like positioned to help conservatives. But the truth is, it doesn't matter in large part, because most people are not making their decisions based on facts. I mean, conservatives are more likely to make decisions based on facts, I think, in my opinion, from the way that I look at things. But most people, even on the conservative side, emotion is a big part of how they make their decisions. And so that's an area where we need to think about messaging and how we try to get people to see our way of thinking. We need to think more about that. But she recently lost her dad, and the president, who she worked really hard for, is now not endorsing her for re-election. I mean, the combination of those two things, it's really easy to understand why she could seriously consider not continuing. Like, the reality is, like, Congress is hung at this point. They're not going to accomplish anything. Things are too tight. It's like such a small margin on the conservative side, not enough to actually be able to get anything done. Same in the Senate. So she's looking at, I'm not going to run again. We're not going to accomplish anything over the course of this next year. Why should I stay? Even if she's not planning to run for any kind of higher office, that all makes sense to me.
Yeah. But to me, it was a surprise. I mean, I was like, that was the biggest surprise. I was like, what? Yeah, it was like the biggest surprise I've had in probably, a year or two. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I thought, you're right at you're at the peak. What are you doing? And, so I was like, no way. What the bleep? But you know what you said about before, and this plays into some of like what Trump's character is and stuff, is I think that the technology and like the everyone's on their phones and on X or Trump what's the one, Truth Social. And so it plays into the emotionalism stuff and how people they're getting fired up. And on the left, it happens a lot too. Like, Ray always says this: white liberal women are some of the most like crazy. I mean, they can be, like get really wound up and stuff. But you know what? The other thing I want to mention on Trump is with this whole. Remember when Janet and Trump had the back and forth thing? Well, you shouldn't have taken on the president like that. You know why? You knew that's his personality. If you know that's what his personality is, don't mess with him. And she did. And so there was this back and forth thing, and she did, and you know, she shouldn't have. You know, you have to kind of know, and you have to kind of understand people, I think. And I don't think I don't know about her, but maybe she understands people, maybe she doesn't. But she shouldn't have gone against Trump that way, like just taking him on and making that whole thing. We'll see you in court. You know,
Not if she was expecting to win. I mean, the thing that she's fighting against him on there is something that she can't win. However, here's the thing: is like Maine is filled with liberal women. Let's just be clear about that. This is one of the things that's really interesting that we're seeing, even in the younger generations, right? What's really interesting is in Gen Z, for instance, we've got Gen Z is skewing more to the right among men, but among women, it's just as liberal. Especially millennials, it's much at every generation. I think women tend to be more liberal than men, but in those two generations, it's particularly pronounced, I think. And so it's interesting that I think like she's not going to win in court against Trump. This is a federal issue. Title IX, their entire enforcement mechanism is to withhold funds. That is what it is. They cannot come in and regulate and tell Maine that they have to change their laws around this stuff. But what they can do is they can withhold funding, right? Like that's the reality when it comes to Title IX. That is their ability to get people to fall in line. And so the idea that she's going to see him in court and win is preposterous, but it doesn't matter because so many people just being like, I'm going to stand up to that bully, is going to get like a lot of the people on the left to want to push back, want to stand with him. I mean, Trump lost Maine by 6.5%, right? And so like there are so many people that are going to join with her and appreciate her simply for doing that, even though she's going to lose in court.
Yeah, isn't that another part of the whole thing, the whole what's going on now? A sad part of what's happening in this country is this whole male versus female thing, and that started with Hillary and Trump back in 2016. In fact, I sometimes kind of wonder to myself if that might have been the final straw in my own marriage, because I was for Trump and she was, you know, she was a Democrat, my ex-wife, and you know, who knows? But the other, what's the other thing I was going to say? Oh, on the so I think she didn't. Did she win? Did she have a temporary or a small win on that? But
I mean, temporary, like
she was going around saying we won. We said we would fight him and we won. I can't remember what happened with that. But
so he was withholding funding that was unrelated to education. So like the way that the law works.
Oh, right.
He can withhold funding for education. He cannot withhold funding for other things related to the state of Maine, I believe. Now, that being said,
wasn't it school lunches or something? Lunches?
It could have been, but it wasn't. It wasn't a direct, like the reality is the funding is going to be withheld over if this is not corrected eventually, but there are certain areas where he couldn't. I will tell you that like Maine in different forms and fashions, I have sources that will say that we've lost out on grants that would have come to Maine-based businesses and companies and universities that likely would have happened that have not happened. And so that's not making the press because that's not going to make mills look good. But the reality is there's money that's not here in Maine because of this fight, despite the fact that she got her win.
You see, you see, that's where you shot yourself in the foot, Janet, because you made a public stink at the White House, and now the president is going to, because that's his personality, he's going to take it out on you, and it affects the rest of us. So you should have shut up. She should have shut her darn mouth in front of the president and the whole world. But she didn't. She had to go and be Miss Janet. I'm going to take on the. By the way, before we move on, I want to say I think this whole trans stuff is just ridiculous. I think that women or trans men should be out of the locker rooms and all that. But I will also say that I think that schools could handle this individually, and the whole making this thing a huge deal was not really even necessary. But because there's not a lot of trans kids in Maine, but I think that trans stuff in general is a fad that should not be happening, but because of, whoops, there goes my screen again. But because of these liberal, basically it goes back to communism in how you take down a country, push these agendas. And I believe that the whole trans agenda is just another fad. And the kids, that's probably one of the negative things about the youth. They're quick to jump on some good things, or to speak out against Israel on for what's happening in Gaza. But they're also very naive, susceptible to. And I know we got up here. Were you looking at the clock? We got to wrap up. They're like the trans thing. I'm like, oh my God, where are our basic, we got to get back to basic value. That's a good thing to mention too, is that I'm very, very, very strong on stoicism, which is being judicious and patriotic, temperance and wisdom. And it's where we have really gone wrong with so much lately, is we don't have the stoicism that we used to have. Everybody's all emotionalism, and people identity politics and all this crap. And and when you tie that in with the Federal Reserve, and the national debt, and then inflation and all this stuff, and it trickles down, and then COVID, and it comes down to eventually comes down to your local politics, and then your union, your municipal unions are going to say, hey, we need more money too. So there goes your property taxes and all that stuff. So it's just it's a huge battle, and it's a huge nut to crack, or a big. Oops, there goes my screen again. I'm actually, I kind of enjoy it to some extent, just the being in the mix and trying to work out these problems. So that's where I'm coming from at it. As much as I can enjoy, there's got to be a limit, probably, like Marjorie Taylor Greene has learned, maybe, but that there's at least so much you can take and stuff. But I do enjoy being in it, and being part of the mix, and giving it a go, even if there's look at the money that's going to be in this race. I mean, I'm already getting cards in the mail for Susan Collins, and
I've heard 600 million or so, something like that, is going to be spent on this race.
I mean, that's
between the different, which is just a crazy amount of money.
I'm just gonna watch them both. Hopefully, watch them both attack each other, and with the and then when the dust settles, we'll see what happens. I don't know, but them both, maybe that's if Graham actually doesn't make it through the primary, and I don't think.
Somehow he's still got a substantial amount of support, despite the Nazi tattoo and open, and the even covering up the tattoo. He tattooed over it, but anyway, it's evidence of.
But I want to know who are
really problematic, and all the other statements that he's made over the years, and just it's so fascinating, and in the fact that he's a communist, which is crazy. But
democratic socialist at a minimum. But who are these people that keep going to his little town halls and fill Biddeford 800 or something? I'm like, and I'm wondering, are some of these people that they're just repeat customers that keep going around? But I am seeing some signs, and if he probably shouldn't say this, but but it's kind of obvious. It's obvious to me. If he wins the primary, he will have had signs out for over a year, that's a hell of a advertising boost. So, but I don't think he will. I think he's, maybe I'm being, too self-centered to say this, but I think he's but given the last election, where I was the upstart with, against, Shelley, or whatever, the outsider, I think Graham Plattner might have been, I think he may have been the left's answer to Ethan from Saco, even though they rolled it out really well, because they didn't know if I was going. I said I would run again. I said I would run for something on Maine calling, but yeah, so they might have been afraid that I would run for something else and get some sort of working class movement going or something. Again, how many second choice things did I get? Who knows? Anyway, but yeah, so if he's, and I swear, we're in the twilight zone. We're in 1984, because he worked for the State Department. I wonder if he's actually was like created for, like, he was, his backstory is weird and sketchy, how he came up. The New York Times did a story on him before he ran.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. That was
Steve
so
Robinson.
obvious. Yeah.
So what? Wait a minute. What?
This
How
oyster
did that
farmer
happen?
from Maine who only sells oysters to his mom.
But how does that happen? How does that happen unless you were an organized?
Oh yeah.
Like like some sort of organized, artificially by the State Department or by some Democrat group, and the whole Bernie, the socialism thing. But Mainers are loving it. I guess they're eating. I mean, that's where I think people are ignorant. They're falling for this Democrat socialism crap. And Bernie, what has he done? He's just sat there. He sits there in Congress or in the Senate year after year, and he just goes, "It's all rigged. Whoa! It's all rigged." And then but it works. It's a grift, and he keeps going. And now he's got, and they launched this guy Graham, and he's got it's like, "I'm Graham Plattner. I don't know what, my voice is unnaturally deep, but here I am, selling oysters to my mom. Oh my God." I mean, it's just like we're living. I swear to God, we're living in a cartoon world. I swear to God, it's like sometimes you just have to like laugh. It's
laugh or cry or both a little bit. Yeah, no.
Laugh or
Don't
cry.
you remember
Who knows?
Bernie's mittens? Don't you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
From that cold inauguration in 2021? Yeah, no. Bernie's not really done a whole heck of a lot. And what was it they were saying?
He's a millionaire, though. He's made so much money.
He was part of a commune at one point, and he got kicked out for being too lazy. So
I heard you guys say that this morning on Ray's show. I was like, wait a minute, is that true?
I haven't looked it up yet, but
how can you
do your own research. But
how can you be too lazy at a commune? That doesn't. It's like, I don't know. You didn't.
Evidence of why communism doesn't work.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, well, thank you so much for coming on, Ethan. It's been a fun time, great conversation.
Yeah, it was good. It was great talking to you.
Yeah. Despite being an independent, I think there's a lot of stuff that we have in common. And appreciate you being involved in the political process and trying to raise awareness about the issues that are important to you through running, even though you're running as in a position where in our two-party system, it's challenging for anybody other than one of a Republican or Democrat to get a real fair shake, and unless they're named Angus King, who is he's a Democrat, just in case
he's a Democrat.
He pretends to be an independent, but yeah. So unless you're Angus King, who's actually a Democrat, yeah.
I'm hoping to again just to be that unique little nugget or whatever, that little whatever, that thing, that unique thing that is, I mean, I'll never be in a party. That's who I am. I won't call me stubborn, but from day one, I've always been kind of a stubborn person. And that's probably why I stayed, an independent contractor working for myself. But hopefully it will work. Maybe it won't again, I'm fiercely independent, but I believe that's how Americans once were. That's who we are. We're all rebels. We were born out of the American Revolution, and we need to get that back. We have lost that. We have become so apathetic as a country. It's disgraceful. But it's sort of and I'll land on this. It's sort of understanding, though, because of the way the media is, and government has almost made people want to give up and have in COVID too. COVID should have been the 1776 moment for us to say this is all BS and fight back. But it's not a light matter that brings me to this decision to do this, and it's very serious, and I don't want to sound like, everyone always says this is the most important election of our lifetime, but it actually, this is a serious thing when you take into account all the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I'll land there. I know my mouth's like really dry. I'm probably dehydrated.
Well, I'll let you grab some water, but thank you
Yeah.
all for watching, and thank you for being on, Ethan, and maybe we'll have you on again in the future.
Thanks.
But
thanks for everybody watching, and
we'll see you
good to
back
be here.
here. I might,
Okay.
who knows? We'll see. I might have another one coming on later tonight. Hopefully, we'll see what happens with that. And I've got Lisa Keim coming on. I think it's Lisa Keim coming on tomorrow. So we'll see you all later. Thanks again, Ethan.
Thank you.